Okay, let's find Joe. All right, make host and change host, and you are now the host, my man.
All righty, so let me see if I can pull this. Let me see here if I can share my screen. Just bear with me real quick.
Cool.
Hopefully you can see my screen, right?
I see it.
All right, let me admit. So hopefully everyone, I mean, I know there's people that are joining now, but I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's meeting. And I'd also like to say, this is probably, and I call it the coup de grace of real estate investing. And that's why I was really interested in working with Tim on this topic. So first of all, thank you, Tim, for working with me. I am Joe Boston, for those of you that don't know me. And I actually am the organizer of the Dallas Real Estate Investment Group. And working with Tim of the West DFW REI Group, we have similar goals in that we want everyone to succeed in this ever-ending changing career field is in real estate investing, trying to sign people in. And one of the things that we realize is that the topics that we want to focus on are the ones that you can hit the ground running as fast as possible. And we think this one is definitely one that you can actually do that. So just to give you an overview of who we are, we're very similar to Tim in that we are a real estate investment group located in Arlington. And we've been in existence since 2010. And I know similarly, he started in 2009. And our website is dallasreig.com, just so that all of you would know how to get in contact with us. And our event page is actually on our website as well. So for example, you would have seen this event. So we encourage all of you to register with us as well, because we do collaborate with Tim and other groups, as well as host various meetings. Here's our meeting format, which we meet every week. So we're very active. This is our pre-COVID meeting agenda. And you can see that we pretty much have every week covered. The first and third week of every month, we have a speaker. The second week is going to be teleconference. We're similar to this Zoom meeting. And then the fourth weekend, we have a real world event. So as you can see, we're very active. Additionally, we have a real estate brokerage, which I am the broker. So if you're interested in getting your broker's license, please contact me and let me know, because I feel that every real estate investor should have access to someone with a real estate license or be licensed themselves.
Hey, Joe, sorry to interrupt, but are you sharing your calendar?
It's not up right now, but they can just go to the link.
Okay, I just want to make sure you knew that it wasn't showing the way you were talking about events. So
yeah, so it's not updated because we don't know when we can actually meet in person.
Okay.
That's it. So today's topic is buying houses with no money at any time, any location, or during any market condition. First, I'd like to start off by giving you a little tidbit of why that's important and kind of the other strategies, just to give you a highlight. So when we talk about flipping, there's the 4 F's, I'd like to call it. And those 4 F's, if you like to write them down, is finding, funding, fixing, and then flipping. So a lot of you might be familiar with those terms. Also with rentals, it's buying, and you've heard of the BRRRR technique, right? Rehabbing, renting, and then refinancing. So similarly with subject twos, and I've been doing this quite a while too, and Tim's going to allude to this. I mean, he's going to go in depth, obviously, on this topic. But it's assisting, acquiring, adjusting, and accepting. And what's really interesting about this process is that you notice on the other two was buying and actually using your money. And so, and this actual strategy and technique, you're not necessarily using that. And so that's one of the reasons why it is so powerful. And, you know, I go in depth as well when we have these conversations about these techniques. But all of you here today, you're in for a real treat, because this is one of the most powerful techniques that exist in real estate investing. And if I would have known this, and I think I tell Tim this a lot, is if I would have known this, I mean, probably 20 years ago, I mean, my portfolio and my bank account would look a lot different. And so hopefully when you all learn this topic, this technique, you'll feel the same way. So I'm really glad that we're going to have this topic here. And Tim's the really good expert to teach this, because he actually, you know, in conversations with Tim, he actually started doing this when he was starting his real estate career, which, you know, a lot of us don't do that. Most of us start with the rentals or, you know, start flipping. Well, he dove right in. So, you know, I'm really honored to actually be working with Tim. So first, I'd like to thank you for your 24 years of active duty service in the Marine Corps. So thank you, sir.
You're welcome. I quit early.
You quit early, huh? I tried to make it. That's just a long time. Tim is from Michigan, and he just let me know that he was actually a contractor that supported Lockheed, moved him to this area. And he promoted himself in 2006 and actually resigned from being an employee and went full-time into real estate investing. And then, just like most of us that you hear speaking, realize that it is a privilege to teach others how to be financially free utilizing real estate. And so Tim caught the bug like I did and started a real estate investment group in 2009. So we were very, very close together there. And obviously it's called the West DFW REI Group. And he'll share what, you know, he has so many different things to offer, has an updated new website. But the one thing that I really like is Tim's effortless and desire to make sure that all of you have all the information you need to be successful in real estate investing. So that's one of the reasons why I work with him, because we're very similar in that regard. So going back to subject twos. Subject twos is in essence, and I didn't mention this to Tim, but it's how I made it as well. And so when you're listening to this technique, I really want you to dive in and listen to all the nuances of how it works, but also realize that you're helping somebody for the most part in their most dire need, you know, in their life. And so we are actually the solutions experts when we utilize this program. And so I am really excited to hear you talk about it, Tim. So without a further ado, I'll let you take it back and welcome everybody. And I can't wait to hear this topic tonight.
All righty, hold on one second here. Let me take this back over. Okay, good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Let me get my screen pulled up here. Can everybody see that okay?
Yes.
Okay, so Good evening, everybody. I want to go ahead and just jump right into this. We have a lot of things to cover tonight, so I want to get right at it. Just want to cover a few admin notes first. If you could please, can everyone hear me okay? If you would just drop a chat in the box there so that we know that the sound and video is good. Please put your phone on mute. And also, I don't think I put it in here, but please keep yourself on mute unless you're speaking. And Pamela, she'll mute everybody here. I think we already have in this call, but we just try and make the call quality as best as we can for everybody. If you happen to have video or sound quality issues during the call, I recommend that you turn your video and any kind of unnecessary programs off that are running in the background that may be doing like virus scan type things, using up computer processor and internet bandwidth, especially for the folks that are new to the Zoom or webinar type events. That makes a big difference in your call. Please keep yourself on mute if you're not speaking. My assistant is on the line here with us tonight as well, Pamela. If you would, Pamela, go ahead and chime in there and say hello to everybody.
Hello, I'm Pamela. I've been Tim's assistant for almost a year now. And so if you call the office, more than likely you're going to get me. On the off chance that Tim answers the phone, you get him. But I'm the person you're normally talking to, which we don't get to see y'all very much anymore in person.
Hopefully that's going to change soon.
I hope so.
So Pamela does a lot in the office. If you have any questions or need help this evening, please send a chat to her directly and she'll take good care of you. If you have any questions, need any help. Thank you, Pamela. Okay, so moving on here. Drop in a chat box here. Let us know where you're calling in from. I know we have folks from mostly the Dallas-Fort Worth area, but I know we have a few out of the area. Just curious how far the marketing went on this. Drop it in the chat box and tell us where you're calling from, please. And the next thing is, I want to ask everybody, how many of you have you been given a free house? Drop that in the chat box too. I know there's quite a few of you on the call here that do have a vast background and experience in this business. So I'm just curious as to what kind of experience level we have and stuff, because we may call on you for some support and participation during this call. And always curious about, and this also is important for the newbies on the call, to make a believer out of you. A lot of people don't realize, don't believe that you can get a house given to you, and it really does happen. So I just want everybody to realize that it is true. It does happen. I'm trying to move this video out of the way. Here we go. Okay. Okay, and then I'd like to ask everybody, if you could, keep the questions to the end. I'm going to be talking about 180 mile an hour to cover a lot of stuff during the night, and there's a good chance that I may answer your questions. So if you don't mind, try and wait to the end. We do have Q&A time planned at the end of the call. So just jot your questions down and then we'll address all those. But like I said, I may cover it for you anyhow during the call. Okay, what are we going to cover today? Why is it so important to learn about this strategy today? You know, to me, it was just one of those natural things. I always thought this strategy was something that everybody wanted to do. But today, it's even more important because of the wave of pre-foreclosures, I think, that are about to hit us. You know, if you think about what we're going through right now with COVID-19, of course, there's always a lot of pre-foreclosures anyhow. It's just a matter of finding them. And this is the strategy to help those people. But today with COVID-19, it's just going to increase the numbers considerably, in my opinion. And I'll tell you why here in a little bit. What I believe is about to happen in this COVID-19 market, and we're going to get into that quite a bit here, but that's a new piece into this presentation because of the market conditions that we're going through. We're going to talk about what does buying houses with no money, or tonight specifically, subject to buying houses subject to the underlying mortgage and what it means. We're going to get into the details behind that so that you really understand what it is. What makes a potentially good subject to deal, and I say potentially because just because there's a mortgage on a house and somebody's willing to give it to you doesn't mean it's a good subject to deal. We're going to talk about that. What makes a bad sub to deal? Again, just because somebody wants to give you a house doesn't mean it's good or bad. I want to make sure you understand the ones that you might want to shy away from. What are the advantages of buying subject to? Well, the biggest one is leverage and the fact that you get to help so many people. And by the way, some people don't like this, but if you're not in this business to help people, please hang up the call now and don't go any further tonight, okay? Because you need to want to help people in this business in order to be successful. And there's a lot of people out there that give investors bad names because they don't learn these strategies correctly, and they try and take advantage of sellers. And we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. I skipped one. What are the disadvantages of buying sub to? Well, there are some disadvantages, and we're going to get into that. Again, one of the things that I like to teach, and I want to make sure that you understand it between tonight and the workshop that's coming up, is I want you to be able to look at every deal from every angle and decide what is worth it, what's not worth it, and making sure that you're doing the right thing for not only your business, but also for the sellers. I have walked away from a lot of deals because the seller, it wasn't advantageous for the seller to do a deal. And I gave them other options. So I make recommendations to them, not just try and take their house. So that's one thing you might want to consider. What kind of homeowner will consider selling subject to? Well, there's a lot of people that think only distressed homeowners will sell to you. But that, I'm here to tell you that's not the case. With my military background, I've done a lot of business with veterans in the past, and a lot of them don't have bad credit. And actually, it's just the opposite. They want to protect their credit, so they're looking for solutions. And that's what you will be able to go away with from this call tonight, is being able to offer solutions to help people. And that's what we're going to really get into. What kind of houses can you expect to buy? Well, naturally, you're going to have distressed houses, but it can be pretty houses. It can be all kinds of deals. And we'll cover some of that. What are the risks? Well, do you think there's a lot of risk in buying houses in today's market? You know, COVID-19, if you're not thinking about on down the road in the future, so if, let's say you go buy that house today, subject to what happens if the unemployment goes up? What if the number of cases keep going up like they have been reporting in Dallas County, for example? You know, you could have a huge risk if you put the wrong kind of person in that house, or you buy it all wrong, structure the deal wrong. There's a lot of risk, and we're going to cover that stuff in more detail. What's the risk to the seller? Well, there sure is risk to the seller, and we're going to talk about how to minimize those risks and how do you portray that to the seller? How do you make them feel comfortable that you're minimizing the risk and they're not high risk? So we'll get into that. What are your exit strategies, and have they changed any today in COVID-19? I'm here to tell you that the exit strategies, in my opinion, have changed. You just have to be able, and not so much in the types of exit strategies, but how you structure it and the terms that you lay out for that. I think you need to really consider that when you're putting your deal together. So we'll get into that some more. What to do if the lender calls the mortgage due? I bet you for any of you that are new in the business, that might be one of the big concerns. And we'll get into that. We'll tell you what I would do anyhow, and see what you think. What can cause you to lose sleep at night? Well, if the market crashes, that'll probably cause you to lose some sleep at night, right? What if you sell it or rent it? That'll cause you losing some sleep at night. We're going to talk about how to minimize some of that stuff and try to avoid it. Setting expectations for success. This is a big one for me. I want to make sure, and so I've been doing subject twos for 20 years this year. And I'll get into my story a little bit more here in a moment, but I really believe that my way of setting expectations with the seller has helped me be successful in all my deals. I have had virtually no problem with sellers, and I'll talk more about it, but I've had virtually no problem with sellers in all the subject to deals I've done over the years. And I like to say it's because of how I've prepped them and the expectations. What not to do. Do you think learning what not to do is just as important as what to do? Well, we'll get into some of that. Closing subject to deals. I don't know if Martin Garcia got into the call tonight, and hopefully he'll be at the workshop, but closing subject to deals. There's I've heard a lot of stories about investors trying to tap dance around some of the sensitive questions, and then they leave it up to the title company to try and recover it at the closing. And we'll talk about some of those things that I think you should do to ensure that they close. And then we'll cover the details of the upcoming workshop on 8 August. So just a quick introduction on myself. I'm not a comedian, so I'm just going to get right into this. My name is Joe Boston Jr. So was that good, Joe? You like that one? So I joined the Marine Corps right out of high school, and I was 18 years old. I was trying to get out of town, I was a young punk, and thought I knew it all. But I joined the Marine Corps on the buddy system, took a friend of mine that I grew up with, and we went off to sunny San Diego for Marine Corps boot camp. So I met my wife on Christmas leave on a blind date. And got married 5 months later. Was home. I've been in the Marine Corps for 5 months at the time. And then we got married 5 months later, and we just had our 45th anniversary. So I'm not quite sure how she put up with me all this time, but still married. I retired from the Marine Corps after 24 years. Like I said, I quit early. I could have gone longer, but it was just the good timing for me. And had I not retired then, and then took a job to move down here to Texas from Maryland and stuff, I just I wouldn't be here probably where I'm at today. I took a job at Lockheed. That's what moved me down here. I was out there for 8 years as a senior logistics manager with a company called BAE Systems. We were a support contractor for Lockheed, and had a great time. But I knew that I did not want to stay working in another job after 24 years of military, having multiple bosses all those military years, and then multiple bosses at Lockheed and BAE Systems. I knew that I didn't want to stay doing that job. So I started studying the real estate business, and that started in 2000. And since then, I've spent well over $100,000 in my education trying to learn this business. And I did not want to reinvent the wheel. I knew other people had learned the tough lessons. I wanted to learn from them, and that's what I did. Is I spent the time and money, and I spent several years from 2000 when I started Lockheed up until 2006 is when I resigned. And I believe in being a student of the business, and I still learn. I'm constantly learning after all these years, new things and new tips. That's why I keep in touch with Joe Boston. He helps me tremendously. And I just believe that you always have to keep learning or you're going to fall behind in this business. So I gave my resignation in July of 2005 that I was going to resign in July of 2006. Nobody could believe that I was giving them 1 year written resignation. Now, do you think I was ready to quit then if they would have escorted me out? Everybody thought that I was going to get escorted out of the building because of all my top secret clearances and special program access. But something about me they liked, and they allowed me to stay for that whole year. It would not have bothered me one bit to leave early if they'd have kicked me out in 2005 because I was ready. I planned my exit strategy, and that's what I think a lot of people should do. I see too many people just jump out and then they end up going back in the job market again later because they didn't plan it. So my business was already running before I resigned in 2006, before 2005. My wife kicked me out of the house in 2008 and said, go find an office, because I had been working out of a home office. So I did that. I went and found a place. I rented for many, many years. We finally bought an office in Weatherford a couple of years ago. We have a great location downtown Weatherford. If you're ever out in Weatherford, make sure you look us up, okay? So I was a mentor for all around the grand students in Texas and Canada for almost 5 years. I learned so much during that time frame, teaching, because I learned from other people. It wasn't just what I was teaching them, it was what they were teaching me as well. So I loved it. I had a great time with it, but then it got to interfere with my business. So I resigned from that. I've taught numerous Subject 2 classes over the last, I don't know, probably teaching it probably at least 10 years, maybe even longer. But heck, this is the second, third, fourth time that Joe and I have been together on this class. So it's something that really hits home with me, and I feel real comfortable with it. A lot of people don't, but hopefully you'll feel more comfortable with it once I'm done tonight. We started the West DFW REI Group in November of 2009, which we just had our 10th year anniversary party for the group last November. So we had a great time. I see several of you on the call that were at the anniversary party. Had a great turnout. It's been quite a 10 years. My hair has turned a bit grayer and thinner over the last 10 years. Joe, can you relate to that? Although you don't have gray hair.
Oh, you can't hear me. You just cut it off.
I can hear you now. I can hear you now.
Yeah, you just cut it off, Tim. That's all you have to do. Just cut it off.
I hear you now. Okay. Why is it so important to learn about this strategy today? Think about this. Record high unemployment. Many businesses are closing the door for good. Businesses that have been around for many, many years, they're closing the doors for good. Remember, I mean, for those of you that are from the Fort Worth area, Hofbrau Steakhouse, 38 years in business. They're closing the door for good. Man, that's just hard to fathom. And that's just one of them. I mean, there's a lot of businesses that are going under. The number of cases are still going up. All you got to do is turn on the news and hear that not just Dallas County, but many other states are having trouble getting this under control. They're saying that the Memorial Day weekend and of course all the protest has contributed to that. And A lot of the government stimulus checks, people are finally realizing that it's not going to pay the bills. Imagine that, right? And some people aren't even getting the stimulus checks. Foreclosure restrictions are going to be lifted at some point, as well as the eviction restrictions. So think about what that means to us. All of these people that fit into this category in some way are potentially going to be struggling and looking for solutions to prevent foreclosure and protect their credit. So that's the opportunity here. And this is why this is so important that you learn this strategy. This is just not the one size fits all solution. This is just one of many tools in your toolbox. You know, you're still going to have wholesale deals. You're still going to do fix and flips. You're still going to do buy and holds. You're still going to do all these other things. This is just one of many other strategies and tools in your toolbox. And I believe in having a full toolbox. So that's why this is so important, at least to me. And I don't have a clue why all equal is on there. So I'm not a professional PowerPoint creator, by the way. Sorry if I disappoint you there. Oh, okay. So they all equal sinking homes underwater, right? Is that kind of a cool slide? So, but that's what it boils down to, right? Is these are potentially homes underwater. Now, I'm not an economic economist. There's a lot of people that say, oh, the market's going to come back and we're going to be booming and huge appreciation and stuff. But there are going to be those people that are going to have problems and their homes are going to be underwater and they're going to be looking for a life preserver. And we're going to get into exactly how you can help those folks. So what I believe is about to happen is that in this COVID-19 market is that many people are going to go back to work. Some are already doing that now. Some, as you already heard, the unemployment rates have gone down. Not everybody's going back though. A lot of people are going to be able to catch up on their mortgages and their arrearages over time, and those people would be fine. I think the people that that's going to apply to is the ones that had good careers, good income, maybe they had some cash stashed away in a savings, so they were able to survive making the payments and stuff without falling behind, and then they go back to work in their nice career jobs. That's not going to be the case for everybody, but I think a lot of people are going to fall into that. Some are going to find new jobs. They'll get caught up on arrearages and over time be fine. And then there's going to be the homeowners that were struggling before COVID-19 that I believe are going to be the most of what we'll start seeing. And I think that's what I mean by that is if they were already struggling before COVID-19 and then they lost their job, maybe got divorced over this whole thing, or maybe they're still struggling to make ends meet, those people I think are going to be the ones we're going to see stepping up and looking for a solution, and that's going to be us. That's what I hope is going to be is us and you. You can buy houses with no money, with owner financing, but that's not what we're here to talk about today, right? We're here to talk about buying a house, getting the deed, what they call subject to the current mortgage remaining in place. In other words, you're going to take ownership of that property, but they're going to leave that mortgage in place with their name, and we're going to talk about how you take over that mortgage. It means you're going to be taking ownership of the property. However, the mortgage remains in the seller's name. And I guess I missed something in here. Okay, so we'll talk more about that here in just a minute. I apologize, I didn't complete that slide there. What makes a potentially good subject to deal? Well, the first thing you're going to learn here is that you're going to want a truly motivated seller. This is not a strategy that just somebody wanting to sell or thinking about selling. More than likely, it's not going to be that kind of person. It's probably going to be the person that really needs to sell and sell fast for some reason, okay? They may have bad credit. They may have good credit, looking for a fast solution. Remember I told you about all the military veterans that I did sub 2 deals with? As a matter of fact, I have 2 right now today that I've had 11 years subject to. They're both military veterans. 11 years. I have one of them that checks in with me once in a while to see how it's going, but they don't get upset. They don't get mad because they know I've taken care of their credit and paid that mortgage on time, and they just want it to get done and taken care of. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. The property with one or more mortgages against it, may be over leveraged. Property in a distressed situation financially, behind on payments. A property distressed physically, needs a lot of repairs that the owner can't afford to pay. A property with no equity. You think a property with no equity could be a good subject to deal? We're going to talk about that. Some people think no equity, how's that a good deal? We'll get into that. Property with some equity and the seller is willing to wait to get paid. Those are great deals there, or could be. Anybody got any other ideas on any other good subject to deals? Drop it in the chat box. We'll try and talk about them here in a little bit. So what could make a bad sub 2 deal? Property that's over leveraged excessively with too many liens. I've seen properties that have been in default for 10 years because the sellers learned how to play the foreclosure and bankruptcy game, and 10 years. So it's 10 years of no property taxes, 10 years of no insurance, so the lender's putting insurance on it, 10 years of abuse of the property and having a lot of repairs to make. That is probably a bad deal, okay? You got to remember there's a balance between the arrearages, the value, and the repairs in order to make it a profitable deal. Property with a high mortgage balance and excessive repairs could be a bad deal. You have to do the analysis and pre-screening to find out, but it could very well be a bad deal. By the way, I'll talk about how you can put any property under contract regardless. All these bad things we're talking about here, there's still a way to go put that under contract and see if you can find a buyer. I'm sure some of you know exactly what I'm talking about, but some of you, it's probably got you thinking now and scratching your head. Property with too many repairs and arrearages. Oh, property with uncooperative and difficult sellers. Let me tell you, that's a lesson I learned early on, is that just because somebody's willing to give you a house doesn't mean you want to deal with uncooperative, difficult attitudes. In this type of deal, you've got to have their cooperation. It's crucial to your success. If this person is uncooperative and difficult and argues with everything you do and ask for, you may not want to deal with them. You might be okay with it, but I'm of the attitude now that I don't need to deal with it. I don't want to deal with it. Property scheduled for the auction and not enough time to solve their problem. You know, sometimes you just can't move fast enough. And there's a lot of folks that are in denial in this type of scenario, and they don't take any action until the weekend before the auction or the Monday before the auction, looking for that last bit of hope. Sometimes you can help and sometimes you can't. And that may be one of them. Property with a reverse mortgage. I have never been able to figure out how to do any deal with a reverse mortgage on it. But even cash deals, they've always been over leveraged, but not as a subject to deal. If anybody has any ideas on that, I'd like to hear it. I've never been able to figure out how to do that one. Property with a high mortgage balance, excessive back taxes, and repairs. So, there are scenarios out there where, they're just too difficult, and I classify it as a bad deal. If anybody has any other bad deals in here that we should talk about, let's drop it in the chat and let's tell everybody about it. What's the advantages of buying subject to? Well, to me, leverage is a big one. You're buying the house with no money in many cases. Now, there may be cases that justify you digging some money out of your pocket on that subject to deal. But what you'll see is a lot of times that people don't necessarily want the money. They want a solution to prevent the foreclosure. Some people are going to want money. You're probably going to find houses out there today that have some equity in them. But that doesn't mean you have to pay them today. You might give them money, but you might negotiate with them to pay them later. I've had sub-2 deals that I didn't pay the sellers any money, any of their equity, until I resold the house 8 and 10 years later. So it's just all on how you negotiate that deal. Low risk because you have minimal money involved. Again, that's one of the things that I loved about the subject to strategy is very low risk and very low money out of pocket for these types of deals. One of the first things that Ron LeGrand taught me at I think it was my very first event that I went to, was if you don't write a check, you can't lose money. And if you think about the subject to strategy with those words, it makes all the sense in the world, right? If you don't write a check, you can't lose money. So keep that statement in mind as we're going through this stuff today. Your credit is not required, so your credit is not affected. That's another great benefit for you as an investor. If you have bad credit, then this strategy, it doesn't matter. You don't need credit for it. So, and that's why I've kept a 838 credit score, because I don't buy houses in my name. Okay. It's a quick closing. You can close these deals real fast. Once you know you got a deal, it's really just up to the title company and how quick they can get the title work done and documents. So you're not waiting on lender approval and stuff like that. It's fast. So there's a lot of advantages here that just make a lot of sense when you see it in writing and think about it. You can help so many families, and this is a biggie. You can help so many families in need of help to prevent foreclosure that realtors may not be able to help. Realtors do a great job at the selling retail sales of homes, but there's some things realtors can't do when it comes to sellers that need a very fast solution. And when we're talking about this type of client, this type of home situation, the sub-2 strategy is one of the best to getting it done for that seller and helping them with the problem that they have. Unlimited buying power. You have no limits financially on how many houses you can buy using the sub-2 strategy. If you go the retail route and you go borrow money from lenders, conventional lenders, you're going to have a limitation. The only limitation here is you. How many can you buy? How many can you handle? The only limit is you. Any other ideas on advantages to buying sub-2? These are just stuff that come to my mind very quickly. drop them in the chat. We'll talk about them later. What's the disadvantages? Well, there are a few. They're a lot of work. For those of you that might be lazy and are not detail oriented, this is not the kind of deal for you. There's a lot of steps involved in a sub-2 deal. There's a lot of details, a lot of dates and timelines that you need to track and manage. You need a system. If you don't like to be a systems guy and document and track things, I caution you, this type of deal, if you're doing many of them, this type of deal is hard. There's a lot of work involved. Pamela she's probably shaking her head over there saying, yeah, no joke, Tim. But there's a lot of pieces to it. There's a lot of documentation to it, okay? So please think about that. Don't be one of these people that I get a phone call from that says, Tim, I got a sub-2 deal. Can you help me go through this deal today? I said, what kind of education have you had on sub-2s? Have you ever done it? They said, no, and I've never been to any training. Well, that person's just asking for trouble, okay? You need to plan this. You need to study it. You need to learn it. And that's why we're going through it today. You're not in the driver's seat and don't have much control if the lender decides to call the loan due. They have the right, they have that right. It's called the due on sale clause, okay? Is that a disadvantage? Well, it is if it happens, because you're going to have a problem, but you have to learn how to deal with it and how to try and prevent it, okay? There's a lot of ways that you can do that. But if you don't do things correctly, and if you are in that situation where the lender calls the loan due and you don't know what to do, you got a little bit of a problem. So it could be, depends on how you look at it, could be a disadvantage. What kind of homeowner is going to sell subject to? Well, motivated sellers that need a creative, out-of-the-box solution. That's probably the most common. But distressed sellers behind on their payments, and their credit's been damaged. That's what a lot of people think sub-2 sellers are, is people that are distressed and have some sort of problem. Sellers with great credit that have a job transfer and don't want to worry about 2 payments and potentially miss payments and damage their credit. I've done a lot of deals, sub-2 deals, with people that are trying to plan ahead and prevent a problem. So they start seeking out solutions. What you want to do is learn how to be there as the solution when they start looking. Sellers that inherited a house and they just want to be done with it quickly, okay? There are subject to inherited properties. People inherit family-owned properties, and sometimes they're sub-2, sometimes they have mortgage on it. What kind of property can you buy? Pretty much anything, right? It could be any type of property. It works on all of them. Ugly, pretty, single family, multifamily. I really like the pretty houses. There are plenty of pretty house sub-2 deals out there. So you're going to start seeing those, I believe, in the near future. What are the risks to you? Well, okay, sorry about that. In my opinion, I think it's minimal because I've learned how to structure the deals correctly. Okay. So I don't think it is a big deal. The seller could spaz out on you, and you'll hear this. If you don't, this goes back to the expectations statement I made earlier. If you don't set the expectations properly and the seller's expecting you to pay off that mortgage quicker, sooner than later, then that could be a problem. They could cause problems for you. Timing is critical when you're working with pre-foreclosures and when you wire the funds to bring that payment current and stop the foreclosure. I'll just tell you this quick story. I had a pre-foreclosure that I had a difficult time finding a buyer for. I had it on the pre-foreclosure under contract. I put it on the market for sale. I found an owner finance buyer. We were supposed to close on a Friday afternoon at 1 o'clock. At 3, the buyers were late going to closing. They called and said they needed to delay till 3. At 3 o'clock, the title company called me and said, we're closing our doors. And I said, what do you mean closing your doors? That title company went out of business Friday afternoon at 3 o'clock before my deal got closed. So I got the title company to send me the paperwork. I was able to translate that into my own documentation. I did a closing myself on Saturday. I do not recommend you do that, but I was trained how to do it. So we closed it on Saturday. He forgot to bring his $15,000 down payment for this house. So I said, what are we going to do? How are you going to get that money to me? He says, well, meet me at McDonald's at Hewlin and 20. I went to McDonald's at Hewlin and 20, and I got there and I called him. He says, come on inside. We're inside. I said, we are not. He also told me he was bringing cash. I told him we are not sitting in McDonald's and counting out $15,000 in cash in a McDonald's. I wasn't doing it. So he came out to my truck. I got the $15,000. Monday morning, I went to the bank. I had to deposit that money, and then I had to wire it to the foreclosure attorneys, and it had to be received by midnight in order to be taken off the foreclosure list for Tuesday morning. We got the call finally at 10 o'clock Monday night that they finally received that money. Now, when you think about risk, do you think there was a huge risk there to the buyer as well as the seller? I mean, the buyer, if that money had not been received in time, we may have had a difficult time getting that $15,000 back. We probably would have eventually, but it was still a huge risk, right? The seller was at risk because he almost went to foreclosure, but luckily we stopped it just in time. So yes, there's risk associated with these types of deals. The lender could call the loan due if you and your buyer fall behind on the payments or property taxes. You know, so is there a risk there? Yes. One thing I learned there about property taxes is when you're selling these subject to deals that you bought, make sure you always have an escrow account established. That's why you want to have third-party servicing companies like August REI manage your payments for you so that you have an escrow account that takes care of the taxes and insurance. But if you let the buyer take care of those taxes and they fall behind and don't pay, they could get foreclosed on for taxes. As soon as that happens, as soon as they file the foreclosure notice, that's going to trigger that lender to look and see what's going on with that account, right? Because the lender is now at risk for losing their asset. So yes, there's a risk there. The market could change and interest rates could increase and the lenders may call the loan due. There's a lot of speculation on this one. I've never seen it happen, but there's speculation that with all these low interest rate loans, 2 and 3% out there, if the interest rates started going up to double digits and stuff, the lenders may want to call it due and refinance and get a higher interest rate. But the biggest thing you can take away from these kinds of training calls about protecting what you're doing and preventing the lender from calling the loan due is don't be late on your mortgage payment. Don't be late on the mortgage and make sure it's properly insured. Those two things there will minimize the risk. There's still a risk. I'm not telling you it can't happen, but I'm telling you that you're going to minimize the risk by always paying a payment on time and making sure it's properly insured. As I said earlier, don't write a check. You can't lose money. Yeah, as soon as you start writing checks, you increase risk. Okay, so just be careful on how you structure those deals. In the workshop, we're going to get into detail on how you structure subject to deals to minimize your risk. Seller could call the lender and tell them how they sold the house to you. This goes back to that uncooperative, difficult seller. If they get mad at you because you aren't paying it off quick enough for them, or you don't return phone calls, and if you get a bad attitude with them or whatever, but the seller, or if the seller's just plain a nasty person and hard to deal with, they may call the lender. I've heard this happen. It's never happened to me, but they call the lender and say, I sold my house to Joe Schmuckatelli back on such and such date. Why isn't my mortgage paid off? Well, they know darn well why. But that could cause a whole bunch of problems for you and the lender. Okay. The market could crash with COVID-19 scenarios, and buyers and renters can no longer afford the house. So think about this one. There's a lot of speculation here. You could ask 100 people and get 100 different opinions about what people think about the market and what's going to happen long term regarding buyers and renters, and being able to keep payments current. But if you think about it, if you can't work, at some point unemployment's going away, and you've got to be able to pay the mortgage payment or the rent payment, one of the two. The moratorium on evictions and foreclosures is going to go away at some point. And if you think about all the absentee owners, all the outside investors that have come into Texas and bought properties, thinking we had a good solid market here and we were never going to have a crash, think about all those people that are probably thinking twice now because renters aren't paying the rent, and they're starting to fall behind on payments. So there's I think a huge opportunity here with absentee owners and the pre-foreclosures just because of this. Renters and buyers could move out and leave you stuck with the mortgage as well as repairs. Not uncommon, right? If you got a renter or an owner finance buyer in a house, people will just walk away and not even think twice about it. It's hard to imagine why somebody would buy a house and then just walk away, but they do. It's happened to me. I just actually had a renter abandon a house that was behind on the March payment this year. And we filed the eviction notice in March, and then COVID hit, so everything was put on hold. Well, then she decided to abandon the house in April. So fortunately, I got my house back, but just think if she hadn't, I'd still be sitting here not collecting rent on this house. Now, by the way, that house is nice and gorgeous now. We totally remodeled it, and it's back on the market, and we actually have a renter for it come 1 July. But think about all those landlords, all those absentee owners out there that could be falling into this category right here. Okay, could be a huge number. What's the risk to the seller? Well, I mean, it just makes sense, right? They could be worried that you don't pay their mortgage, and it could affect their credit, and it can tie up the credit in that house. Okay, that's one of the big obstacles that you're going to have to learn how to handle. A lot of sellers think that you could damage their credit, which you could. Okay, but you have to be able to explain to them what actions they can take and what actions you take, how you have structured your business to prevent this kind of stuff from happening. But this is an objection that you're going to want to learn how to handle and take care of and satisfy that seller. Your renters or buyers could damage the house and then default, leaving the seller with the mess. You know, a lot of people don't realize what you're doing when you buy the house subject to. A lot of them think that the damaged house, if the tenant, if you rent it or if you sold it to a new buyer, that if they damage the house and walk off, they think it goes back to them. They think they're going to have to take care of it. And that may be true depending on how you structure the deal, but that's not how you should have taken care of it. So Again, you just want to be able to explain that clearly to the seller on what you've done and how your business is structured. Leaving the mortgage in their name could impact their debt to income ratio and lower their purchase power in the future. So I hear this one a bit, but it's not hard to overcome. Basically what I tell everybody is if you sold your house to me, subject to using this strategy that we had been talking about, that it's really no different than if you were to keep the house and rent it. When you go apply for a new mortgage, the lender's going to ask to see a copy of the lease agreement and see that somebody else is paying the mortgage. Okay, that's really the same type of scenario here. In 20 years, I've never had a seller come back to me and say, I couldn't buy a house because of the way I sold my house to you. It's never been done. Nobody's ever said that. I've never heard it happen. Now, it may have happened somewhere, but what I do think could be a problem is if they had bad credit when they sold the house, then, you know, if their debt to income ratio is out of whack, they may have trouble with buying something. But honestly, if they're worried about credit, you can tell them that you're actually going to start improving the credit start next month. You're going to start paying the payments on time, and you're going to pay them systematically because you have it all set up on an automatic system through a third-party servicing company. So they're actually going to see their credit scores going up by selling their house this way. So I hope that all makes sense to everybody, but it's a great way to counter that objection. What is your exit strategies? Well, you have several. You could live in it, right? I helped somebody not too long ago structure a deal where they bought it for themselves and they lived in it, bought it sub 2. So that's a pretty sweet deal, right? Getting into a sub 2 deal with next to no money and it didn't impact your credit. So you could lease it. I love this strategy. So you're leveraging their credit and by taking over their house and their payments, and then you turn around and immediately rent that house. So many of the mortgages out there today, over the last, 10 years or so, have very low interest rates. That means that it's very easy to cash flow those properties and be a cash cow from rental income. So, you know, with that low interest rate and the solid rental market we have here, you know, you can really make a lot of money by leasing those subject to deals. And Airbnb, I don't like that strategy, especially nowadays, since nobody's traveling. But it is a strategy that could be used for sub 2 deals if the market comes back where Airbnb is in demand again. But I would stay away from that strategy today on a sub 2 deal. Sell it with owner finance wrap. That's kind of what I've been known for. Besides buying them subject to, is selling them on wrap mortgages. We've done a bunch of those. I'm not a huge landlord fan. I do some buy and hold, but it's really more for people that aren't quite ready to buy today, but this happens to be the house they want to buy. So we rent it to them in hopes that we transition them into buying it on an owner finance note, or selling it retail to them if they get ready for it. But this is a great strategy for those sub 2 deals and making a nice cash flow. Because if you buy it at 3 and 4% and sell it at 8 or 9%, you're making a sweet cash flow. And if you got, depending on what the price range is, I had one that refinanced me about a year ago, refinanced out of it, that I was making $967 a month positive cash flow because of the way the underlying interest rate was versus the wrap note interest. So sweet deals if you can find those nice homes like that, and they are out there. You can fix and flip. I've done sub 2s as fix and flips. You know, I bought it cheap. It was an Arlington property, and husband passed away. The kids wore the place out. It was trashed, bad, holes in the wall. Nothing worked. It was really bad. Bought it sub 2. totally rehabbed it, absolutely gorgeous, and sold it for the highest cost per square foot of any house in 7 years in that neighborhood. It was just a gorgeous house. But I got into it for almost nothing. So it was a sweet deal. Wholesale or assign your contract. I don't like this one. And you'll hear people talk about this. I personally think this is a bad idea. And the reason I say it's a bad idea is that when you are face to face with the seller, you are making a commitment to that seller as to what you will do for them. And to me, that's putting my reputation on the line. Okay. So if you go in there and you've established a good rapport with that seller, they trust you enough to sell you that house subject to, you turn around and assign your contract to either another investor or an owner finance buyer that you just assigned it to, and you're out of the picture on it, then I think you are at very high risk, because if you turn it over to an investor and they default on it, then I think you're jeopardizing your reputation. And to me, that's a big deal. And for those of you that are just starting in this business, I am going to recommend that you start thinking about your reputation from the very first day you start acting as a real estate investor. Whether you've done a deal or not, but you're out talking to buyers and sellers, build that reputation so that people know who you are and trust and are comfortable in what you do and what you tell them. And to me, that's what this one's all about. I think if you wholesale or assign that contract and you step out of the picture, I think you're putting your reputation at stake in that deal. So think about that before you do that. You could retail it, and I'm not sure if I've ever bought it subject to and just turn around and retail the home, but it's kind of like a fix and flip. But you could do that, but I'm not sure how many of those homes you'll be able to do that with. Of course, you probably could do it. It's just, if you fixed it up, you might be able to make more money out of it, right? Or if you sold it on owner finance, you're always going to make more money than what you will as a retail deal, once you learn how to structure the owner finance notes. Okay. All right, moving on here. What if the lender calls the mortgage due? What should you do? Okay. Besides panic. I know a lot of people think that, that this is bad juju. This is a bad thing. And it can be bad, but there's a few questions, a few things you're going to want to look into first before you ever take any action or respond in a scenario like this. By the way, I've only had, out of 20 years, I had one deal that the lender sent a letter to the original borrower and said, we noticed your name is not on public records as the owner of this property. You have 30 days to fix it. Remember my comment earlier about property taxes and not having an escrow account set up? This was my one and only deal I've done ever with no escrow account. And the borrower, the buyer for me, was in default on their property taxes. And that caused the mortgage company to send that letter. Well, guess what? I stepped in, I foreclosed on the seller for taxes and mortgage. And then I went in and brought taxes current, brought the mortgage current, and we never heard another word from the lender about threatening them to having to put the house back in their name. So, that just goes to show you, all they want is the payments paid, and they want the insurance coverage on the property. Okay. So making the payments on time, keeping the property insured, and taxes. If in default, fix it. So if you go and find out that maybe your third-party servicing company, or for whatever reason, your assistant didn't pay the the mortgage payment or the check didn't make it that you sent in the mail, whatever it is, you find out it's in default, go fix it. And then make sure that it doesn't happen again. I just, the lenders, if you don't know this, mortgage companies are not in the real estate business. This is a big deal. Make sure you understand this. They're not in the real estate business. They're in the lending business. So you want to make sure that those payments stay current at all times. The lender does not want the house back. It costs them tens of thousands of dollars to have to pay an attorney to foreclose and take a house back. So you want to make sure it stays current so that they're happy. That's all it takes, is keeping them happy. Would you ever want to call the lender and say, go ahead, Mr. Lender, call it due? Now, before you say that, you're going to want to make sure your payments are current. And the reason that I tell you this is because I've talked to several attorneys about this one. By the way, I'm not giving any kind of legal advice or anything here, but this is my conversation with them, in that it may be very difficult for a lender to be able to force a mortgage into default if you have on-time payment history in that house. If you don't miss payments and they're paid on time and it's kept insured and the taxes are paid, they don't have a case to stand on to call that thing due. Okay? So doesn't mean that they wouldn't try. And when that happens, then it's going to cost you a lot of money. It's going to cost you some of that sleep at night that we talked about earlier, but it doesn't mean that they won't try to, but they're going to have a difficult time. But you have to have your ducks in a row. You have to be ensuring that you're doing your part to take care of that payment and make sure it's paid on time. But you could stand up and say, okay, Mr. Seller or Mr. Lender, go ahead and call it due. Go ahead. You want to force this loan into default. Now, if you're in default, then that's a little different scenario, right? So just think about that. If you prevent that from ever happening, I mean, in 20 years, again, like I said, I've never seen this happen other than that one that I let the buyer be in control and I let him say he was going to pay his own taxes and insurance when he didn't. Once I stepped back in to be in control and took care of it, then it was no problem. Never heard from the lender again. And of course, the next thing you're going to want to do is call an attorney, right? If they're really going to pursue the issue, then you need to get your attorney working for you. And although I've never been in this scenario, and whoops, what in the world did I just do? Okay, 1 second, please. Sorry about that. I don't know what I did. Touched the screen wrong, I guess. So, like I said, I've not been in this scenario, but I know that what I do works. What I do has prevented all these years from a lender calling the mortgages due. We pay the payments on time. We take care of the taxes and insurance, and it's not a problem. What kinds of things can cause you to lose sleep at night? Over-promising and under-delivering. And the biggest thing that I can tell you is regarding the mortgage, don't promise sellers that you're going to pay it off in a certain time frame. My crystal ball does not work. I've tried to find one over the years that actually works, and I can predict when I'm going to be able to sell it and pay it off. It doesn't work. I can't find it. So it's a big problem. I would encourage you to never promise something that you are not in control of. And when you start getting other people involved, i.e. renters and owner finance buyers, you know, if they're involved in it and you're depending on their income and credit capabilities in order to pay off something, then don't promise when you're going to do it. Now, if you have plenty of cash, unlimited cash, and you can afford to go pay cash and pay it off on a certain timeline, that's a different story. But just make sure that you do what you say you're going to do. If you don't, they could make your life pretty miserable and keep you up at night and cause you to lose sleep. Okay, so keep that in mind. The lender calling the loan due, that might cause you to lose some sleep at night. But like I said, if we just, the way we talked about earlier, if you learn how to deal with that stuff and prevent it, you know, you're going to be a lot more comfortable with it, and it's probably not going to cause you to worry about it too much. You do need to worry about it enough to take action on it and get it done, get it corrected and back on track. That's for sure. If your buyer or renter starts missing payments, you know, let me talk about this one for just a second. When you go buy houses subject to, you know, there's a lot of people that will tell you, you know, you're not promising to do anything. You know, some people teach that when you go buy, when you're sitting in front of a seller, you're talking about taking over their payments and stuff. Depending on how that note's structured, what the equity is in the deal for you, what your financial situation is. When you get a free house, it's not really free, guys. You still have to take care of payments, taxes, insurance, utilities, lawn care, repairs, things like that. So you can't just take the deed on the property and then not do anything with it. I hope that makes sense. So don't step up and say, I'm going to take this house with no money out of my pocket, and then you don't have any money to pay the payment or to take over the utilities and the maintenance and upkeep on it. You want to be able to take care of business and do what you said you would do in your contract. Okay. So if you turn around, you rent this or you sell it on owner finance, and now those buyers or renters start missing payments, you need to have a backup plan. And we'll talk about it in the workshop where, you know, you might partner with somebody. You can call me, call Joe, call somebody else on this call, call another investor that you know to joint venture with to be able to help with the payments. You want to make sure that you can take care of business once you get that commitment and that promise that whatever promise you made, you know, whatever thing you committed to in your contract, make sure you see it through. Or what's the alternative? Make sure that you structure your deal so that you don't commit to taking over those finances until some important timeline, right? So what if there's low equity in the deal? Would it make sense to not commit to taking the payments until after you find a buyer or renter? Think about that. If there's not much equity in the deal, and maybe it needs, you know, a couple thousand in paint and cleanup, landscape, whatever, but there's no equity in the deal to speak of, or you have no money, wouldn't it make sense to structure that deal where the seller continues to pay the payment until the buyer takes over, till the buyer steps in, you find a buyer for it? I mean, that's something for you to consider, think about. That's one way to handle those difficult situations where you got a seller that's saying yes, but you don't have any money to support it. Reach out to myself or Joe or somebody else, you know, to help with that deal. What can cause, this one's one that can cause you losing some sleep. The seller forgetting what you're doing for them, what your deal was. This is why back in the early part of this presentation, I talked about seller expectations. You know, make sure the seller understands what the deal is and what you're doing for them. Make sure that you put that in writing so that they don't forget it. So all of a sudden, you know, they have amnesia and they forget that, oh yeah, they forget that you stopped them from going to foreclosure. You know, they were right there at the door, ready to lose it to foreclosure, but you stopped it for them. You protected their credit, and you've increased their credit score since you've taken over the payments. They might forget that. But if they're calling you, they're threatening to call the mortgage company, that kind of stuff for a new investor that's not experienced with this stuff, it might cause you to lose some sleep at night. Not getting all the required paperwork signed at closing that you might need later. This is where systems, training, checklists come into play, making sure that you get everything that you need at closing. Because quite honestly, when a distressed seller is in a situation where they're behind on payments, they're financially distressed, maybe they're divorcing too, when they sign those documents and they leave town, you may never hear from them again. And there's going to be times, and here's an example for you. I had a subject to deal that I had a renter in, and the house caught on fire. My seller was an active duty Marine, lived in Okinawa, Japan, and it was with Chase Mortgage. Fortunately, I kept in touch with my seller, and even though I had my third-party authorization form signed like we are taught to do, to use with the mortgage company, some mortgage companies don't accept those disclosures. They want their own signed. Had I not been able to communicate with my seller, I'd have been in a big pickle trying to get that insurance company to work with me and the mortgage company to work with me, had I not had that third-party authorization to get it signed with Chase. So I hope that makes sense. You know, get the paperwork you need, get the, and I'm going to mention it here shortly, but the communications aspect of it is crucial. The seller's got to understand you have to keep in touch. They have to keep you informed of address changes, email changes, phone number changes, so that you can call in an emergency. Plan to do it all yourself. Plan to get everything you need so that you are self-sufficient. But there could be a situation like this where you might need the help of the seller. Can't communicate with the seller when you need help. That's kind of going right into what I was just saying. If my seller would have not kept me informed of his email and phone number changes to Okinawa, Japan, or Iwakuni, Japan, I would have had trouble communicating with him, and I'd have had trouble. That will cause you to lose sleep at night, because you could be risking you could be risking losing money, right? Here's another one, escrow refund checks. If you don't get the right authorizations and don't do the right paperwork changes, you may receive a escrow refund check that you should be getting to be able to cash, or what if you don't change the address and it goes to the seller? You've been making the mortgage payments, which include the escrow payments, and then the escrow refund check. For those of you that own houses and know what I'm talking about, every year they do the escrow analysis. If they send that escrow refund check to the address on record and it goes to the seller's new address, you're not going to get that check, when in fact that check should come to you. And then you got to have the proper power of attorney and stuff to cash it. So these are all things that you could lose some sleep over at night if you're losing money because you didn't get the right documentation. Remember that there is no due on sale jail, okay? No due on sale jail. There is a lot of people worried about that due on sale clause and the subject to strategy being illegal. I can tell you that if it was illegal, our attorneys wouldn't close the deals with us, and they wouldn't put the mortgage amount taking subject to line item on the HUD-1 settlement statement. I think it's line 503. I don't have it in front of me, but it's on the HUD-1. Taken, mortgage amount taken subject to, okay? And the attorneys wouldn't close these deals if they were illegal. So just keep that in mind. You just have to learn how to do it correctly, but there is no due on sale jail. I hope you liked my little animation there. Okay, what not to do. Do not sell with owner financing without setting up the escrow account. I mentioned that to you earlier, and having a third-party servicing company such as August REI manage it for you. August REI has been around a long time. That's who we use and have been for many years. They're very popular here in the DFW area. They're sponsors of our group, and I think they're sponsors of the Dallas REI group as well. So keep that in mind. It's well worth it to let them, pay them the fee. And if you structure your agreement correctly, the buyers are going to pay that third-party servicing fee anyhow. But they can set that escrow account up for you and manage it and pay it so that you don't have to worry about the payments being late. Okay. By the way, that also gives your sellers a level of comfort that a licensed and bonded third-party servicing company is managing the payments for you and for them. So keep that in mind. Very important piece of the transaction to have that third-party servicing company. Do not wholesale or assign sub-2 contracts. This is just my preference. I told you about it earlier. I really believe that you do jeopardize your reputation by doing this. Now, it's a different story. You know, if Joe and I were working together and I decided to wholesale or assign a sub-2 deal to Joe, I'd be really comfortable with that. But don't just do it to any other investor off the street that you don't know. You need to think about that to protect yourself, protect your seller, protect your reputation. Do not assume anything. Trust but verify what the sellers are telling you. There's a saying, when I was in Marine Corps and on recruiting duty, when you're out talking to recruits, you know, and this holds true with sellers, if their lips are moving, they're lying. So remember that people will tell you what they think you want to hear if they're in a distressed situation. So trust what they're saying, but verify everything. Do not assume anything when it comes to what the mortgage balance is, what the arrearages are, what the payments are, you know, things like that. You want to make sure you do a title check, find out what the real liens on the property are so that you know what you're committing to in your contract. Do not assume anything. Never promise something you can't control. I mentioned that earlier. You know, always under promise and over deliver. And I think that's one of the big things that's helped me considerably in my business over the years is just, you know, making sure they understand what we're doing, when we're doing it, what we're committing to, but that we're not promising that it's going to be paid off in a certain time frame. Even though I intended to pay off these two that I told you about earlier that are 11 years old, they've both been sold on owner finance wrap mortgages. Even though I was intending to have those paid off, refinanced and paid off probably 5-6 years ago at least, here we are 11 years later and my sellers still are not upset about it because it's not affecting their credit. The payments are paid on time like clockwork and they're just comfortable with it. So again, don't overpromise. Don't promise something you can't control. Don't ignore sellers, insurance company, or the lenders if there are issues. Do not do this. You can't stick your head in the sand like an ostrich and expect the problem to go away because it doesn't work that way. You may not want to talk to the seller, but my experience has been be honest and upfront with them and explain what's going on if there is some issues or if they have questions. Many times it's just they forgot something or they didn't understand something. But don't ignore them. That's the worst thing you can do. Reach out to them periodically and keep them updated. That's another way of keeping up on the phone numbers and emails by sending them a periodic text and checking in with them, see how it's going. That's a way to confirm the phone number is still good, and do the same thing with email. Okay. But just don't ignore them if they call. Don't forget what you told the seller that you'll do for them. So this is very important. Be honest with them. As soon as you start stretching the truth a little bit, or give them a little bit of a lie maybe, or just kind of stretching, exaggerating things a little bit, it makes it hard to keep up with that. Be sure you know what you told them and document everything, and even go as far as writing it all down. I mean, I use a system called RealFlow. I'm a big believer in systems and documentation, and we document every little step of the way, every phone call we have, every email, every text, so that we have all that information in the sequence and the flow of things. So that, you see the gray hair? My brain doesn't work like it used to years ago. And, so I have to document it all. So I would recommend you do that same thing. If buying a property in a land trust, be sure to complete all the land trust documents immediately at closing. You will hear a lot of folks teach that you don't have to complete everything for the land trust right away. You can, because you keep it in your safe and it's not something that's filed on public records. I'm here to tell you that the further away you get from that closing date timeline, the more chances are you're going to get overcome by events and forget to do that documentation. And it just gets harder and harder to catch it up and play catch up and get it done correctly. Do the documentation. Land trust is another whole topic. It's not included in this call, but there's a lot of pieces of paperwork to the land trust for asset protection purposes. You've got to go do it and get it done. Do not ignore it. Closing subject to deals. I am happy to say that I have never, ever in 20 years had a deal not close at the title company for me of any kind. Wholesale deal, retail, subject to. So I'm pretty proud of that. And I have had more than one title company closer, tell me that my customers are well prepared and well versed and understand what the deal is all about. Do not expect to go tap dance around some of the harder questions about loan payoff and what are they really doing, about the loan staying in their name and things like that. And then have them start asking questions at the title company and expect the title company to solve it, because many times it doesn't work. Okay. It's also unfair to the title company, and the title company doesn't know what your deal is. So they don't know what you committed to and what you've said or anything. So don't do that. You need to prepare your seller, make sure they understand what the deal is, have them repeat it to you. Tell them what you're doing for them, have them repeat it back to you so that you know for sure that they understand what you're doing and when to expect payments and when you're taking over the first payment, when the final is going to be, when it's going to be paid off and so forth. But be honest with them and don't ignore it. Don't be vague either. Tell them the details. Okay. I would much rather have them back out at the last minute because I told them everything than I would to have them raise Cain and be a problem down the road, or even be dissatisfied at any point, because I want a good reputation. I want those customers to give us good testimonials and reviews and refer other people to us. That's what we do. And I would encourage you to take that same approach. I'd rather lose that deal before closing than to have them be upset or something go wrong later. I use and highly recommend you use Simplified Title Company. I know Joe's got a title company there that they use. We've been using them for years. I will tell you that you need to make sure you investigate who you use. Not all title companies are investor friendly. Not all title companies will do the creative deals such as subject to and land trust type stuff, and they won't all do wraps. So keep that in mind. Their information is on our website here, West DFW REI Group, under our sponsors page. We've been working with them for years and years, and they periodically do updates and stuff in the group as well. So, but reach out to them, find out how they can help you, and if you have questions about subject to deals. They will close your sub to deals, and they also have a way that they can close. They can also insure. They can insure the sub to deals, which is a big deal for sub twos. A lot of title companies won't do that. They will, and as I mentioned, they will insure your subject to deals, and you want to call and ask for Martin Garcia. He is the vice president of the company, and he's been closing my deals for many years. So reach out to them and let them answer your questions for them. Take them out, buy them a cup of coffee or lunch, and find out how you can work together. Not all title companies are created equal. Many years ago, I had several title companies start doing my deals in land trust, my subject to deals in land trust. Oh yeah, we can do those. And they do one or two. And then they find out that they have some sort of problem with it with somebody in the company or something, and they didn't like it. So they just, I had to go start all over again. That's not the case with Simplified Title. I've been working with them for many years. So don't be afraid to reach out to them. Setting expectations for success. Absolutely critical to the success of your subject to deals. I've been talking about it throughout the presentation about making sure the seller understands, making sure they understand what you're doing, when you're doing it, why you're doing it, what they can expect from you, and so forth. Be clear about what you and your company is doing for them. So if you're stopping their foreclosure, make sure they understand when, how, and they understand the process. Make sure they understand the risk and what, worst case, what happens if it doesn't work? That deal I was telling you about earlier, what if that money didn't get to the foreclosure attorneys in time to stop the foreclosure? My sellers and my buyers knew that there was a huge risk there, okay? But I find that sellers are most understanding and appreciate the honesty and just being upfront with them. If you start pulling the wool over their eyes, it's not so good, okay? They get upset. Under promise and over deliver, we talked about that a lot. Don't tap dance around the question, when their mortgage is going to be paid off and their credit freed up. That's the big one for many people, is that question right there. When will they have their credit back? Okay. So be honest with them about it. Don't mislead them. The communications one, we talked about this. You can put them on a frequent email list so you can monitor when emails start bouncing. Hopefully they don't. But you can always send emails that are asking questions. So, you can ask questions about how they're doing. They still live in such and such place? And, have they changed any phone numbers? Do they have any emergency numbers, secondary numbers, things like that? So you can kind of keep the communications flowing with these people, okay? Very important that you keep an open channel of communications. And, this is a big reason right here on why, when you're explaining to them how important it is, so that you can let them know when their mortgage is being paid off, okay? They all want to know that answer. So you can stress that point right there, why it's so important to them to keep you informed of the best communications methods. Prepare them for the worst case and explain your plan. You know, what I mean by worst case is talk to them about what if a buyer defaults? What if a renter defaults? Explain to them what your plan of action is going to be to solve that problem. Okay? Let them know that you have the resources to evict or foreclose and go back in and rehab the house and get it sold again. You know, if they were, by the way, you can always offer to a seller that's worried about credit, you can always offer them to step in and pay the payment to keep their payments current and protect their credit, and then offer to repay them for that payment later. But guess what? Or offer to give the house back, but I've never seen a seller wants the house back. They don't care. They sold it because they wanted to sell it. Okay. So there's nothing you can't negotiate with them. Just make sure that whatever you negotiate and say you'll do, that you do it. Okay. All right. We're almost done here, folks. Okay, agenda for the all-day workshop coming up. Joe and I have been talking about this. I will tell you right now that we still don't know if this is going to be a physical meeting type class or if it's going to be virtual. We both agree that we want it to be a physical meeting, much better for an all-day workshop. But if we have to do it virtually, we will. We've had so many people asking for this workshop. So we're going to do it. We've committed to it, 8 August. And we're going to be talking about marketing strategies. We're going to talk about pre-screening sellers and the kinds of questions that you need to ask. We're going to talk about deal structuring. There's so many different things that you can do, but the pre-screening side of it is so important that you know all the facts in order to structure the deals. So we're going to talk a lot about the pre-screening steps to doing a successful subject to deal. We'll go through that step by step. We're going to have real live case studies, subject to deals that I've done. You can bring your case studies to the event, your deals to the event, and we'll use those as examples in the class if you want to. And I'll tell you how I would structure those deals. I will also tell you that I'm not the guy with all the answers. I will just share with you everything that I think of on how I would structure those deals and a lot of the things that I have done in the past. What are the best exit strategies? We're going to talk about all that. Those exit strategies are going to be based on all this previous stuff up here. Your pre-screening, your the deal itself, the financial situation, the house situation, all that stuff that you learned in the pre-screening, and what the ARV is of the property and the repairs of that property. That's all going to play into the best exit strategy that you have. And there's a bunch of exit strategies. We're going to talk about all of those at the workshop. How to set up the insurance correctly and what happens if you have a claim. Usually we have Dave Burdick with Burdick Insurance at these workshops. He's a sponsor of your group, I believe, too, isn't he, Joe? And he's been around a long time doing insurance on subject to deals. Just like I told you earlier about not all title companies are created equal, not all insurance companies are created equal either. And we've spent a lot of time together talking about insurance coverage and proper coverage for sub-2 deals to allow you to get it done. And again, not every insurance company, matter of fact, a lot of insurance companies will not do these types of deals. Dave is going to talk to you about getting those things done. As I mentioned to you earlier, you know, I had an insurance claim, and a lot of that is making sure the insurance policy is set up correctly and you having the proper disclosures and authorizations and powers of attorney and stuff. So there's a certain way it has to be done. We're going to go through all that in the workshop. How to communicate with the mortgage company after you purchase. So there's going to be times, such as insurance claims, that you're going to have to talk to the mortgage company. I know that might be scary for many of you, but there will be a time when you will have to talk to them. It's happened to me. I'll give you a live scenario in the class, in the workshop, besides the fire scenario. But there's a certain way you have to go about doing it, and certain words you want to say and don't say, but you also have to have the right documentation. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to go through all the different forms and documents required to do a subject to deal. We're going to go through those step by step. There's a lot of different disclosures in addition to the contract. Communications with both buyers and sellers. We're going to go through that in more detail. We've touched on it a bit today. Closing day, how to ensure that your deal closes. I can't stress enough making sure that you prep your buyers and sellers. And it is important for the buyers too, if you're selling it on a wrap, so that they know that there's an underlying mortgage and what it means. And very, very important that you disclose all that information. Testimonials and reviews. I mentioned earlier, you need to start today, if you haven't already, with building reputation and getting the testimonials and getting the written reviews and getting them on your web page. And if you don't have a web page, get one. And I had to start somewhere. Joe started somewhere. You can start somewhere, starting today, and get started with getting those testimonials and those reviews so that you have something to show people, whether it's paper, whether it's online reviews, whether it's video reviews. That's the new stuff, right? Video and online. But I have, my office is lined with paper testimonials that are framed, that I've hung on my office wall from over the years of written testimonials. So highly recommend you do that, because guess what? When you sit down with a seller and I tell them this, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I could tell you bunches of good stories about me, and you'd really be impressed. But I think you'd be more impressed if you heard it directly from the sellers or other customers, buyers and sellers. So it's really important that they hear it. And of course, video nowadays is really powerful. Okay, what to expect on 8 August. I'm going to spill my guts as much as I possibly can during that class to help you be successful. I'm sure that for those of you that are new in the business, or even the ones that know me on this call, you know that that's exactly what I do. One of the reasons that I stopped mentoring for all Ron Grand students is because my commitment for Ron and to his students was 30-minute calls once a week. I could never get away with 30 minutes. There was always so much I wanted to give them, and it was 45 minutes, an hour. I always gave them more than they paid for and more than what they expected. And that's the same here. I'm going to give you as much as you can take and as much as you can absorb in the time we have on the 8th of August. It's going to be priceless. You're going to learn so many different things, not just the stuff that you find out on the web, but I'm going to give you a lot of little tips and tricks that I've learned over the years. We're going to talk about locating, pre-screening, evaluating, what makes good deals, bad deals, making offers, some of my tricks. I've got a new one that I've been doing lately, and I'll just tell you this. We're doing video offers now, and we're having some really good success with it. And we'll talk more about that at the event. Online access to critical forms for success upon completion. You're going to have a bunch of forms that I'll be giving you. We also have some more detailed forms that are going to be available for sale. You'll have an audio recording of the event, and we're going to have video. And even though I have a question mark there, if we're doing the online event, we will have video, right, Joe? You okay with that? Cool. Joe says cool. So we're going to be, so we didn't do video last year, and this year we're going to do that. So you'll have a good reference point to go back to. You're going to be tired, but excited. And if you could talk to the people that were at the class last year, it was the same way. It was exactly that. We were all tired, including me, but everybody was excited because they now had that new tool in the toolbox that they could go employ in their business. And I didn't really mention this too much earlier, but today we still don't see a high number of pre-foreclosures. I'm hearing rumors that some are surfacing now, but what I think is going to happen is it's going to take a few months for this to really kick in. You know, the foreclosure moratorium's got to be lifted. The evictions got to be lifted. The people got to start going back to work, but there's going to be people that don't get back to work. And there's going to be a lot of people that say, I'm behind on the mortgage. I don't want to damage my credit. I need a solution, and I need it now. And you're going to start seeing these people stepping up and start looking for that solution. And that's what we're trying to do on the 8th of August, is put you in that position. I see Joe shaking his head up and down there. That's exactly what's going to happen. Is it going to be as bad as 2007, 8, 9? I don't think so. I mean, again, my crystal ball does not work for that stuff, but I do believe you're going to see a huge influx of people in need of a solution, which we're going to offer. So here's some of the forms that you need for these type events, these type of deals. Property information sheet, a CYA letter, which stands for cover your assets, a notice of underlying lien not being paid off. A few years ago, the laws changed, and it's required that the seller acknowledge being told, the buyer acknowledge being told that the loan was not being paid off during this transaction. We have that letter for you. So you will have that. Step-by-step checklist. We will have a checklist of what you should go through to be successful and have all the documentation that you need. Power of attorney. We have some little tips and tricks that we've added to the power of attorney. And these are things that I've learned the hard way of not having them. And this power of attorney's got all that stuff in there. The end of the year 1098 mortgage statement. You know, a lot of people get confused and they don't realize, a lot of investors don't know this. When you sell, when a seller sells their house to you and it's in June, if they paid the first 6 months of the mortgage payment and you've paid the last 6, who's paying the taxes? Who gets the credit on the interest paid? You're going to split that, right? So the seller don't realize that. And if you're claiming 6 months and the buyer or the seller is claiming 12 months, because they didn't even stop and think about it, the mortgage is in their name, they think it's theirs, there could be a problem with the IRS. So this end of the year statement explains to them that if they sold in June, if they paid the first 6 months of the year, they get that first 6 months credit. They have to send you a copy of that mortgage interest statement that they received from the lender so that you can put it in your taxes and you claim it. We have that disclosure that clearly explains that. We have a list of items for you that you need from the seller. This is important. There's a lot of things depending on their circumstances with the seller. There's a lot of things that you're going to want to collect from them. This is a list based off my 20 years of doing these deals and the hard lessons I've learned along the way. Escrow refund letter. This letter tells the seller that effective such and such date, that they understand and agree that all future escrow refund checks come to you. And if they happen to receive it, that they're to forward it to you so that you can claim it and deposit it. So you're telling them up front, you're not hiding it. You're telling them up front that that money belongs to you. And it's pretty simple to explain it. Okay, this is the page, the slide everybody's been waiting.
Okay, I don't know where Tim went, Joe.
Are you there? Can you hear me?
Yes, I think Tim went away. So,
He was on a roll. I really like those documents because everyone needs them. But
right.
I think that, did he do a disappearing act? Well, I
It
can
looks
kind of
like
take
it.
over a little bit until he pops back in. For that event on the 8th, he was covering the documents that you'll need to have when you're actually sitting in front of a customer. What I'll tell you is that not only will you be able to learn this technique, but it's a building block. And so, you know, a person that I work with, and I see that she's on the call, one of the things that you want to learn about, in addition to this, is notes, right? Because actually, in effect, you are taking over payments, which means that you're actually interacting with the mortgage. So one of the things you can do if there's an equity position is there's the mortgage, there's the note side. So one of the things I'm a big proponent of is using real estate as building blocks. And that's how we made our money in this industry, is by learning different techniques and using them to step up the ladder, right? Because really it's about your portfolio and how much money for any particular person that you want to actually have to replace your income. Typically it's not a 9-to-5 that you want to go back to like Tim. So with this event, it's going to be this workshop, which we've been doing for years as well. And just so that you'll know, my background with sub-twos is I've done over 20 of them. And the reason why, and you'll see that I'm actually at my office now. You can't see my whole office, but how I was able to basically acquire this building was because of sub-twos. It was once I learned this technique, and I've known about this for about 8 years, I was able to transition a lot of those deals into an equity position and then actually utilize that for capital. So hopefully I'll be there. And there he goes, abracadabra, huh? So and also I share some of the tips that I've learned from sub-twos as well. So
Cool.
Are you back?
I'm back. Sorry about that. I have
Got to pay your utility bill. That's one thing you got to do. Send everybody else's in, and then you didn't send yours. I get it.
Yeah, no joke. So sorry about that. Let me get my last slide back up here. Can you see the slide again?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, it turns out that my battery went dead on my Mac, but usually I have very long time, but it's been working hard with all this video. So my apologies for that. Okay, here. All right, here we go. I think this is where we left off, right? So Joe and I have been working on this, and you know, Joe, he's always looking out for his team over there and his members, and of course I'm always doing that as well. You know, so he's really beating me up about price. We gotta give him a good price on this. So we come up with this very special price for you. Everybody like that? No?
Good.
Nobody's excited? Man, fooled you, didn't I? Ha ha ha. What do you think? What do you think of that little guy?
Wait a second, man. We're not getting any reactions to this. That's crazy.
Unmute everybody, Pamela.
Man, unmute these people.
Unmute them.
Do you realize, I mean, that is, okay, keep going. You have to keep going though.
Unmute everybody, Pamela. Okay, so, you know, even at the $19.99 price, Joe and I both agree that what a sweet deal that would be, right? But no, that's not the price. You know, you can make so much money in one deal that, you know, that's peanuts. But Joe is such a good guy. Your cost is only $299 for individuals, which, you know, is a no-brainer in my opinion. And if you are partners, you're a husband and wife, or you have a partner in your business, it's only $399. Now, think about everything that we covered and all the stuff that you're going to get. The forms alone are worth more than this, but we're going to give you the strategies, the pre-screening, the marketing. We're going to go through all that. We're going to do real subject to deals that I've done over the years. I don't know if Joe's got any to throw into the mix here for the event, but you can bring your own deals as well, and we'll go through all that. So that's the normal price right there. That's the price for individuals and partners. Then if you are a member of either of our groups, we know that you get a discount, but we're also going to give you an early bird discount. So if you sign up tonight through 1 August, that's when the early bird discount is, then you're going to get non-members, individual, non-members of either one of the groups is $239, down from the $299, and members are going to pay $209. Okay, so that's a pretty sweet deal. You're saving a lot of money there. Then for partners, it's down from the $399 for non-members down to $319. And as a member of either group, it's $279. After midnight on 1 August, it goes up to the full price. So individuals is $299, and as a member, it's $239, and then partners, which is 2 people, non-members is $399, and members are $319. So sweet deal. That discount ends on 1 August at midnight. The other big bonus that I don't know if I told Joe about, but I'm gonna give you 30 days of email communications with me about your deals. So for those that sign up, you get 30 days email access to me as part of this class. So keep in mind that you're going to want to do your own homework for these. You're going to want to make sure you give me all the information that I need to help you via email. But also keep in mind that I'm doing deals and running a business too. So just don't expect me to respond instantly to you. Although I'm on email a lot, I read email a lot, you will get a timely response. I'm just telling you, some people have gotten impatient when they don't get instantaneous responses. So, but you will find, as I mentioned earlier, I am over the top. I am under promise, over deliver kind of guy. So you will not be disappointed in what you get. So that registration is, the link is right there. I think, Joe, you've got it on your calendar too, right?
Yes, I do. And you know, I realized that's not even a third of their stimulus. We should have at least gotten all their stimulus.
Man. Well, look,
kidding?
Let's go after the unemployment checks too.
You know what? I mean, good night.
So
just to let everybody know, you know, that's about, you know, to file a deed, Tim, you know, it's about, I'd say, depending on how many documents there are, how many pages, you know, it's about $40 just to file a deed.
I know.
So, you know, y'all, that's a sweet deal to learn a whole technique. I mean, that's unheard of. So if it were me and I were you, fortunately, I know this process. I would definitely take advantage of it because you're going to learn a whole new trade.
Well, just, and not only that, when you think about it from a leverage perspective, you can have no money and and if you structure the deal correctly, you stand to make a very large amount of money in a very short period of time, and you stand to leverage a lot of property with no money. You could own a whole rental portfolio or owner finance portfolio in a very short period of time once you learn how to master the art of locating, negotiating, and doing these deals. So
now here's the one thing I do want to throw out though, just because, you know, I wouldn't say absolutely no money. What I want everyone to think of is that they want to be relational. And what I mean by that is expect that you might have to provide some assistance, but that doesn't mean it has to be you doing it. So we're going to talk about that as well. So I actually have some tips and tricks that I'm going to share because the actual sub-2s that I was able to take over, they were behind, you know, but I was able to negotiate that with them, and they actually were making payments back to me to catch that up. So
there's a lot of
so many different ways to do that. But, you know, again, one of the other things too is why you want to participate in these meetings is you want to leverage your relationships in the meeting, because we're not saying you can't work with each other and do these deals. So, you know, definitely participate in this, because one of the things that I've been sharing, you know, with people around my group is it's time again. And I call it, remember I was telling you, it's the salmon run. Unfortunately for, you know, a lot of people is when they perceive it as a down market. For us, the market's up, right? That's when we're the busiest. And so we're now able to help a lot of people. Yep. But you can only do that if you all are ready, you know, and you guys understand how to actually solve their problem and what documentation and how to do it legally so that, you know, it's a successful process for them and you as well.
Yep.
So yeah. So I mean, I can't believe that.
Don't wait until you find the deal to try and initiate the learning process. Right. You know, that's the wrong time, because by the time you learn it, then you're going to have lost the deal.
Right. But they have us though. So
well, that's true.
They have us. But, so once they participate, they've got us here. So, you know, I mean, that's the benefit of being a member of the clubs, is that, you know, they do have a resource.
That's right. That is the backup plan, but you still need to be involved in the learning process and starting it out now. Even while you're learning, you still may be a little antsy about it and stuff. And as I've said it several times throughout the evening, you need to go call a Joe or call a Tim or somebody else that knows how to do these deals. Don't go to another newbie that's never done a deal either. Go find somebody that's got the experience to help you through the deal so that you make money and you take care of the seller. Again, that's my underlying pitch here to you, is that you got to be in this business to take care of the people, and that's going to pay you over and over and over again. So just real quick, I gave you the link in the presentation. We'll get that presentation out to everybody, but you can come right here to the group calendar and click on 8 August and just go through the registration process there. And Joe, I think you're getting that payment info on your website as well.
Yes,
you
that's
can
true.
You can
Same
go to
event page. Exactly.
You can go to either place and get signed up, and we will keep you posted. You know, like I said, it says it's a virtual meeting right now. We're planning that. But if it turns out that we can do a physical meeting and do it safely, we're going to do that. Okay. Right. So, Joe, without any further ado, I think I've wrapped it up. Pamela, go ahead and unmute everybody, and let's see what kind of questions we have. Do you have time for Q&A, Joe?
Sure.
I can't unmute everybody. If they've muted themselves, it won't let me unmute them. So they'll have to unmute themselves.
Okay, give me a second here. Let me see if I can do it. Unmute all. Okay. So, did you just mute yourself, Pamela? But anyhow, well, I've unmuted people, but it looks like they muted themselves again. So does anybody have any questions, any comments, good, bad, indifferent, thumbs up, good job, all that stuff?
I'd like to say, can you guys hear me?
Yes?
Okay, I'd just like to say I really appreciate you sharing such valuable information with us. It seems like you've had so many years of experience, and you are really, truly trying to share what you have learned with others, and I really appreciate that. My husband and I are we are just in the phase of gathering information and trying to build up our capital so that we can get into real estate. We both have full-time jobs right now, so just at the very beginning of putting the idea into reality, And so just being on this call, I'm very appreciative of what you've done. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much for the comments. Joe and I were both in your shoes at one point, gathering information and studying and thinking about it. Let me just comment on that for just a second. There's a tremendous amount of people with online access nowadays. So many people think that they can go online and find information and learn and go do deals and stuff. But what they don't have is the personal relationships and the contacts and the real experts that they can go to and rely on for help. There's a lot of scam artists out on the internet these days. You got to be cautious of. There's a lot of people that are claiming to be mentors when they're not in the state that you are. So they don't understand the local laws and stuff. And you need to be very careful. I'm not saying that out-of-state people don't know. I'm saying you have to do your due diligence to make sure that you know who you're talking to and that they're creditable and it's somebody you should listen to. But again, going back to what Joe and I have said, coming to these groups, being an active member in the group, I call my group the watering hole for real estate investors. It's your watering hole. You need to come to your watering hole, come to the events, come to the monthly meetings or the online events. We're doing a lot of online events now that you'll see on the calendar. It's very easy to attend these sessions that we have. Most of them are 1 to 2 hours. And it makes it very easy to learn and get knowledge and meet other people. Even though it's online, you can meet other people here and find out who's doing what and who can help who, and networking is a very big part of this. So go to the watering hole, go to Dallas REI Group or the West DFW REI Group and become an active member and network and learn so you can do more deals and help more home sellers and home buyers, right? It's not just about the sellers, but home buyers as well. So who's got the next question or comment?
I think you guys did a great job.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Anybody else? Any questions?
Yeah, you guys did a pretty good overview of the subject too. And, going forward, especially, not knowing what would happen to the economy if the banks freeze up, this is one of the buying subject too is one of the key strategies to use for an investor.
Absolutely.
Yep, absolutely.
And what you were, I'm sure in the workshop, you're going to cover the details, but yeah, the paperwork is definitely crucial. And also that relationship with your sellers.
Absolutely. We're going to talk about, I say this quite often, everything in this business is about risk versus reward. And you know, you have to know and understand what the risk is and what kind of reward you should get for that risk. And if your risk is high, you have to see an increase in the reward, right? If it's a high risk deal, you don't want to put yourself at any higher risk than you can afford to, but some risks are worth taking. We all take risk getting up out of bed every day, driving into work, driving down I-20. My God, how much risk is that, right? Crossing the street, you know, we look both ways. We wait for the stoplight, you know. We try and stick to the speed limits on the highway. Well, you have to do that same thing here. You have to do that same thing here in real estate investing, is learn how to mitigate that risk. And it's all about how you negotiate the deals and how you set up that contract. So we're going to talk a lot about that on 8 August, about how taking the pre-screening questions and the answers that you have and the circumstances, and putting that all together and putting together an offer that's going to minimize your risk and maximize your profit based on that risk. So we'll get into that a lot. What else?
You're doing insurance on the subject to. Do you typically carry the old insurance and just put on the new, or do you replace it out?
Absolutely never keep it. And the reason is, and Dave Burdick will get into this in some more detail, but the reason that you can't do that is because your owner has to be the primary insured if it come to an insurance claim. And, you know, if you try and utilize the current policy and go that route and hope that you don't have a claim, you know, you'd be okay if you don't have, but if you ever have a claim, you got a problem. So we always change it. And that's why it's so important that you understand how to set up the new policy so that it's covered by the, for the mortgage company, but your buyer or you, whichever the case, is covered in case of a claim. And then the things that has to be on that policy to not trigger the mortgage company from calling you and telling you you have to put new insurance on it, or they try and put a forced place policy on it. The worst thing you can ever do is let a policy expire and let it go to a forced place policy by the mortgage company, because it's going to be about 3 times the normal cost.
Yeah. So basically, when you're putting your new insurance on, so you haven't had any problem with the insurance company saying, well, who's this, who's this new owner or
never in 20 years.
Okay.
That's why I say, but there's a certain way you have to do it. You have to have certain bits of information on that evidence of insurance to satisfy the mortgage company. All right. Who else? Who else got a question? Somebody else got to have a question on here.
Lisa McCormick has a question, but she doesn't have a mic. And she wanted to know if you can do sub-twos on a manufactured homes.
Sure. Sub-2 works on anything.
She said, thank you.
You're welcome. Who's next? So it's coming up on 9/20. If nobody else has any questions, I'm going to go ahead and recommend we sign off, Joe. I will get this presentation sent over to you, Joe, so you'll have it.
Okay.
All of the current members of the West DFW REI Group, this presentation will be uploaded. I have to check for the guest and see if I can get that, get you access as a guest of the group. But we will work on that. We will probably send you all an email within the next a couple of days to tell you how you can access it. And then, if you have any questions for myself or Joe or Pamela, reach out to us about, in regards to the 8 August event. We'll be happy to help you in that regard. Otherwise, you can just come here to the calendar like I was showing you, scroll all the way down, and you can pay your payments down here.
Tim, Ray Hodges has a question. He said, what about doing sub twos on homes with negative equity?
Well, that probably is going to fall into that risky or potentially bad subject to. But in the event on 8 August, we'll talk about how to structure that offer so you have minimal risk. Remember what I was saying? It's all about risk versus reward. You can go out and write an offer on a house today for $1 million and have it only be worth 100,000. You just added a couple extra digits on it by accident. But if you write the offer correctly, you're at no more risk on that than you are with, making an offer on a $10,000 house. As long as you write the offer correctly and you know what to do with it, then it's no more risk. And we're going to talk about those kind of deals on 8 August.
He said, sounds good.
By the way, I've done a lot of deals with no equity in them, but it's all because of what your exit strategy is and how you write that offer to minimize the risk before you have a buyer. It's basically an option. You learn how to write options correctly. All right, who's next? I'm still excited about this. So if you got more questions, let's hear them. Thank you for the thumbs up, Renee. Hopefully everybody enjoyed this. I really tried to give as much time as we had. I was actually surprised we got it in the 2 hours, even though I got cut off at the end, we still got it covered. So if I missed anything, if there's anything else, please reach out to us and let us know. I hope you all go get signed up before the 1st of August. This is a great opportunity. I can't even, I'm just flabbergasted that, I made that offer so cheap, and I know Joe is as well.
And we'll do follow-up, correct? So we'll follow up with everyone.
Sure.
That's actually here tonight.
Yes.
So that I know some people need to think about it and check their calendars, but at the same time, just know that we're going to be aggressively using this technique going forward. I mean, and this can change your lives, everyone. So, both Tim and I are sitting in front of you as a result of this technique. It's a tremendous opportunity. And I giggle because it's something that, mainstream doesn't know a whole lot about. They probably heard more about it now just because of social media, but this can really change your life when you're talking about real estate investing. And you started off there. I was led into this and then, basically said, oh my goodness, I wish I would have known this, years ago. So,
yeah. I didn't tell that story, did I?
No.
My first event, boot camp, we call them, with Ron LeGrand, who was my mentor and guru that I follow. Of course, many others since then, but he's who I started with. And that statement he made to me, if you don't write a check, you can't lose money, really stuck with me. And he was really talking about creative deal structuring and sub twos. Well, I really love that idea. I mean, I had a full-time job then, but I didn't want to risk any more money than I had to. And I wasn't overly wealthy at that point. I wasn't, poor or anything, but I just didn't want to risk any more money than I had to. So I really studied that part of the business more so than anything else. Well, my very first deal was a wholesale deal, but then I just went to town on sub twos. And that's really how I built my business, where a lot of people start with wholesaling or bird dogging or rehabbing. I started with sub twos because it kind of gave me the same cash flow. I bought the house for very little money, so I leveraged what money I had. I bought the houses for very little money, and I either turned around and rented them to somebody and got a deposit and started a monthly cash flow, or I sold them. Back in the day, I was selling them on lease options until the laws changed, and I went to owner finance. So where a wholesaler gets a wholesaler assignment fee, I was getting down payment money, which, call it what you want, right? It's a big chunk of money in the bank. So that's really how I built my business. And of course, the difference between wholesaling and what I was doing is wholesaler, they do that deal and they have no more income. At me as an investor in buying the subject to deals and selling them with owner finance or rentals, I had a monthly cash flow. So I was getting paid over and over again. You know, if I sold it on a lease option or owner finance, I was getting a big chunk. Then I'm getting monthly cash flow too, where a wholesaler doesn't do that. So that was the thing that really intrigued me. I really liked it because it gives you multiple ways of getting paid. And as Joe alluded to earlier, there's even ways where, you know, most people think about buyers is where you're getting money. But if you got a motivated seller and circumstances are just right, sometimes those sellers are paying you too.
Absolutely.
So I love that. And I've done a lot of deals that way. I've had big chunks of money. I've also had monthly payments for many, many months from sellers that are paying for negative equity differences in a deal. So I just, you know, you can get really creative with this stuff as long, and one of the big keys, I mentioned it right at the very beginning of the presentation, you've got to have that motivated seller. The person that has a need to sell and sell fast, and you have to have the message that satisfies and the solution that satisfies their problem. And when you make your offer has to satisfy their problem. And you have to learn how to stick the knife in there and twist it around in that pain and remind them of just how big a problem they have and how your solution will solve it. Right. And that's how I've done the business and helped so many people. So I hope you come join us. Joe, I think I'm done. I'm turn over to you and let you.
I got one more question, Tim.
Okay.
Russell wanted to know, he said, I assume there are some rehab costs before putting a renter in. Where could we get these funds?
Well, I'm going to say never assume. Take that word out of your vocabulary in this business and do not assume anything, because you will be amazed at how many pretty properties you can buy that won't take any rehab cost. There is also a strategy in this business called work for equity. There's a ton of people out there that want to do the work themselves. So you can buy it for next to nothing and you can sell it, get a down payment, and then your buyer may be a contractor. He may want to do the work himself. Yeah. There's a lot of people that would rather personalize the property and do it the way they want to do it than to do it the way I do it or the way Joe does it. So
I call it, actually, Tim, I call it repair replacement. So I have a program that's similar in that there's a lot of people out there that actually want to do the work or they're capable of doing the work. I mean, they make one phone call and there's 30 people out there that are different trades and different skill sets, whereas we don't have, access to that. So one of the things that you can do is that you can manipulate your deal, right? So you can manipulate the numbers and then you can discount it based on the work that they do. And again, just like Mr. LeGrand said, you're not writing a check. So what you're doing is negotiating terms yet again. So for the gentleman who asked the question, it's about how you negotiate. So to keep that money in your pocket, you got to use your mouth.
Yep.
So that's what you do. And that's one of the things too that we'll talk about is the sales aspect. We don't really talk about that a whole lot because we want to get into the details of the transaction, but real estate, actually, the SIC code is actually real estate sales. And so one of the things that we'll talk about when we're discussing all of these documents is actually how you communicate and utilize those documents. And then, like Tim said, there's also exit strategies for yourself, right? So when you're talking and asking about what types of things do I do to offset some of my expenses, well, there's people that want that house. You're not going to live in it typically, right? Since you're not going to live in it. So now you start to think about what you can negotiate. And so first think about how you don't use your money, and then start thinking about how you use your money.
Right.
One of my first mentors, and then I'll wrap this up, said, hey, Joe, if you can figure out how to do this business without using your own money, then you're a real estate investor. So that's what you all have to think about, and that's why it's so crucial you learn these techniques. As inexpensive as we're offering this, you are developing a skill that you can use forever.
Over and over and over.
Over again. I mean, it's just amazing. Then you can actually, depending upon the buyer you get, then you can manipulate your terms, because remember, it's relational. And so to answer your question, you structure the deal so that those repairs will be done by the buyer. I mean, simply put.
Yep.
And so,
and
that's something we'll talk about.
I'm sure you've heard this saying before, Joe, is flapping your lips is the best paid profession in the world. And all you have to do, I mean, the answer is no if you don't ask for something, right? So,
that's right.
Somebody, a seller may tell you, what would be the least you would consider, Mr. Seller? And they might say 100,000, and you might say, well, is that the best you can do? And then just shut up and let them think about it, and you'll be amazed at what'll happen. They may come down $20,000 just because you asked them if that was the best they could do.
That's right.
And sometimes it's hard for people to understand that, but trust me, it works. And you just have to go implement it and practice it and see what happens.
Yeah. So, well, in closing, hopefully those of you that are still on the call participate in this program. We're going to follow up with you just in case you are thinking about it. I think it's a no-brainer. We will be there. And, the people that work with me that are not familiar with this process will be there, because that's how important it is in this day and age of what we're dealing with now. People are going to need us. And so that's the one thing I want all of you to think about. There's people out there that are going to be in situations that really need our assistance.
That's right.
They don't know what to do when they're in a circumstance when, what is it, 40 million now? 40 million people that are unemployed. Yep. 40% of those, the estimate is that they will not be rehired. 40%. And so since it's 40%, you got to think about it, and that relates to housing. There's going to be some of those people that are not going to be able to stay. And so that's where we come in with our cape.
Yep.
We come in and help them. And this technique actually helps them, everyone. So definitely think about it. I mean, as inexpensive as it is, again, register, take advantage of the savings. And then, we'll actually go through it, because now actually you can start using this program, this process. My estimate is that because of the government basically subsidizing, it's not going to be like 2008, 2009, but in about 6 months to a year, you're going to start to see a lot more activity, specifically with new builds. So another thing we didn't talk about is our club builds houses. Well, if you think about people that are actually moving into new builds, they were doing well, 3 months ago?
Yep.
They were doing great. And then now, if they've gotten laid off, I don't know if you saw that American Airlines now is another 5,000 94% of their business basically is parked. And because of that, everything that touches the airline industry is suffering, and along with other industries. And so that's going to have a significant impact on housing.
Yep.
And we don't get enough credit. We really help out a lot of people, and they can move on to the next house when they do get a job or position or rebound. Just think about that too. With this process, they can bounce back again, quickly, because we basically save their financial health.
That's right.
So sign up and we'll see you. And if you have questions, definitely reach out to us. We'll be following up with you, in the following weeks to make sure that if you do have any questions, you can reach out to us, and then where we'll be as far as where it stands for us meeting in person. Because again, we do not know that, and we don't want to put anyone at risk, even though we have the facilities and we do have probably enough space to social distance. But I really am a big proponent of seeing these documents in person, because we're kind of built that way anyway, and then you can ask questions and mark up everything. But if not, we'll meet this media, and we'll do the same thing. So
well, the meeting we did, the class we did last year, Joe, was really good. I mean, everybody was networking. It was
right.
able to look at documents and stuff, so it was good.
Right. So, and I really like the format, because there's just things you can answer, and then everyone gets to hear the answers and actually gets to learn that way. But we understand the environment that we're in right now, so we respect that. But we will reach out to you and let you know basically as time gets closer if we can meet in person.
When we do the workshop, Joe, I think it's best that we probably have an open mic from everybody, other than the folks that have some noise in the background. That way people can be talking just like we would be in a real classroom if we end up doing a virtual meeting.
Right.
So we'll have to control that, of course, but we'll try and keep it more open instead of tonight where we kind of muted everybody for the presentation period. So.
Right. Well,
Okay.
that's all I have. Well, very exciting. Thank everyone for coming and are participating in this call. This is for your future. I'm excited because I know just on the investor side, there's going to be a lot of money made right now. So we get to help a lot of people, but let's be selfish too. We can make a lot of money in the next year or two. There's a lot of money that's at stake right now, because people still will need to have a place to move, right? That's one thing we know, is that people have to have a place to live. And because of that, they're going to have to move somewhere.
Yep.
And so people that are moving into this area because DFW is robust, and people that have to move out of their houses, we need to be ready for all of them. So,
and you may be able to help both ends of that.
Correct. So we're here to help you get ready. So thanks for coming.
Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.
All righty.